I'm Andrew Joseph Keith. I'm an artist and sculptor, and in this video we're going to be talking about some lighting tips so that you can put your sculptures in their best lighting, whether you're photographing them for social media or you want to present them to a gallery. It's really important for them to look good. So the first thing I thought we could talk about is the lighting that I use in my sculpting videos with a black background, one key light, and then a backlight. And I really like to use these softbox lighting setups. These are cheaper softboxes which have diffusion or a translucent cloth over the front of them, and it just allows for a softer light. It allows the roll-off from the light to dark areas to be a lot more subtle instead of these sharp shadows that you'd get from direct sunlight or if you just had a single bulb. And then behind the diffusion is this fixture with several light bulbs, and we can turn more or less on depending on how much light we want. For the key light, it's commonly recommended that you have the light about 45 degrees from the camera and then up above your subject because that looks more natural. It casts shadows that are more appealing on the face and on the figure. And then I also have a light that's back behind that is kind of a rim light that separates myself from the background or the sculpture from the background. If you like this type of content, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to be notified on future videos. And you can see probably this black sweater is not ideal. That's why I usually wear gray or something lighter in my videos, just so that you're not disappearing into the background. I also have an extra light back behind on this side just to add some more of that separation. And I could even turn the light on the room on. I don't know if you can see the difference there, but there's a light up above here. And that can add just a little bit of hair light for more separation from the background. But for my sculptures, I usually find that two softbox lights are enough. A key light that's close to the figure, and then a backlight that's a little bit farther back and away from the sculpture. Having that key light close to the sculpture with the diffusion on it really makes the light nice and soft. As the light gets further away, that light source gets smaller just because of the distance, and the light becomes harsher, so I try to keep it close to the sculpture. Another option for softening the light are these diffusers. This is a 5-in-1 reflector and diffusion setup that's common for photography. Oh, it got me. So these just help you control the lighting just a little bit better. I got a really big one because why not? These aren't terribly expensive. And it's 5-in-1, so there's gold, there's a white reflector, there's a silver reflector, and a black that absorbs the light. So you get all of these in one reflector, basically. And then also a piece of diffusion cloth that lets the light through, but diffuses it quite a bit. So I already have some diffusion on the light that I have right here. But you can see if I put that, it just adds another level of diffusion. If I bring it closer, just even more diffused and soft the lighting becomes. So if you don't have a softbox, you just have one bright light, you can get one of these and then place it close to the object, move the light close but out of frame, and then that'll soften the light quite a bit. Nice. These diffusers are also commonly used to soften sunlight, so if you're photographing outside and you use one of these big diffusers, really softens that harsh sunlight. And if you have a clean background and diffused sunlight, you can get some really nice results as well. Okay, now let's talk about the background. It's really easy to ruin a nice photograph with a cluttered or distracting background. Generally, when it comes to product photography, and if you're trying to sell your sculpture online, then that's what it is. It's a product you're trying to present. Then you usually want a white, a black, or a gray background. Now, for my videos, I do a black background. And to do that, I've just hung up some sheets that are black sheets. When I can, I get them from secondhand stores, or I've gotten some from Walmart. And then I've purchased some like paper clamps and rings from the Dollar Tree, from the dollar store, as simple hardware to string those up and put those up in the background. Here you can see what it would look like if some of those curtains were open. And you'll notice it still looks okay because the softbox light is really close to me, so that lightens me up nicely, and the background is fairly dark And with those black curtains, I try to move the light as far to the other side of the room as I can so that there's not a lot of light spilling onto those curtains. If I was right up against those black curtains and the light was right next to me, then it'd be really hard to get that black background. And typically I'll go in post-production and darken those darks to where I get a true black in the background. If I want to get a white background, generally what I try to do is bring a softbox right behind my sculpture. Then I also might bring this light a little bit closer. And that allows me to purposefully blow out the background with more than enough light so that we get a nice clean white background. Okay, I just filmed a bunch and I didn't even push the record button, so I gotta redo it. Another option that I think looks really good is the neutral gray background for photographing sculptures. For this, what I did was I took a smooth brown hardboard wall panel. You can get these at hardware stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. Almost like a cardboard that's been compressed with some glue and something to hold it together. So it's pretty rigid, but if you get a 4-foot by 8-foot board, then the entire board is able to flex a little bit, and that's important. And what I've done is I've gone over it and painted it with a neutral gray matte paint. And it's important that the paint be matte, that it's not glossy, because we don't want any reflections coming off of that backboard. And once that board is painted with a neutral gray, then you can lean the board up against a wall, and the weight of the board kind of curves it, so it has this natural curve to it. I also would sometimes put like a chair or a box or something inside that corner so it doesn't bend too much, so that it has a little bit of support inside that wall. You can also put something in the front of the board so it doesn't slide down onto the ground. A chair or some weights to just keep it from sliding down onto the floor, especially if you don't have a carpeted floor. If there's carpet, then usually the friction is enough to hold it in place. And with that natural curve behind it, it takes away the seams, so you don't have to worry about cleaning up those seams after taking the photo. Then the same thing, we try to get some nice soft lighting over above the sculpture. The softer the better. What I did was I took 2 soft boxes and put them right next to each other above the sculpture to get some of these photographs. But even with that lighting, you can see that there's some shadow on either side. So now that I got that diffusion, I would probably add just another layer of diffusion to blend out the light between those 2 soft boxes even more, and that would give me an even softer light. I might block some of the lighting from going onto the background to make that gray darker. So you can put a foam board or just a piece of cloth to block some of the light to spilling onto the background, and that just makes a darker gray background if that's what you're going for. And I think that that looks a little bit better. Just a pro tip, because it is matte paint, it is easy to stain it with oil, so if you're using oil-based clay, or to scratch it, especially if you're moving sculptures on and off of this board. So just be extra careful, maybe put a piece of paper down, make sure that the base that you're laying on top of the board is clean, that it doesn't have any oils or anything that might scratch the board, and that'll allow you to last longer so that you can use it for many photographs. You could also take this board outside and lay it up against the side of the house. You could either diffuse natural sunlight with the diffusion that I showed, or you can wait until the sun starts to go down, so when the area is in shadow, and then the entire sky basically becomes a nice big softbox with consistent lighting all the way around, and that's another way to get some nice soft lighting on your sculpture. Another option is adding separation between the sculpture and the background by using a low f-stop or a lens that's very zoomed in. And what that does is it blurs out the background so that there's a shallow depth of field where only a small amount of the frame is in focus. And that can be another way to isolate your sculpture. So like an 85mm f2 lens or a 135mm f2.8 lens to really blur out the background. It's also a good idea to play with the lighting, move the light around the sculpture. Some sculptures will just look better when they're lit from a certain angle. Some of them might be better when they're from directly above or even slightly behind the sculpture. This allows for a lot of detail in the anatomy if you're doing somebody that's like really strong and you want to see all of the muscle definition in the sculpture, then having it slightly above or even slightly behind, nice soft lighting, but that same lighting might not be as attractive on a female figure. So just moving things around and paying attention to how it looks from every angle, that's really helpful when you're working out these lighting scenarios. Okay, so just to recap, you want to soften the lighting, clean up the background, separate the sculpture from the background, and play with the light to make sure that the lighting is coming from the most appealing angle. Okay, hopefully you found these tips helpful. Let me know if you have any additional tips or questions in the comments below. If you're interested in traditional clay sculpting, then I recommend checking out the sculpting courses. My figure sculpting fundamentals course is a great place to start. There's also a portrait sculpting course that dives deeper into the facial features and anatomy of the portrait, and there's a hand sculpting course that dives into sculpting the hands. You can find links to all of those in the description below, as well as links to my ebooks, An Artist's X-Ray Vision. There's one on the male figure, one on the female figure. I really appreciate anybody that supports the channel by purchasing. Big thank you. Stay creative, stay productive. I'll see you around.